Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is settled. Thank you for coming. My name is Tim DeVito, and I work here at Rutgers Law, Camden.
I'm Jamie Butler. I'm the IT director for UC Davis School of Law. And hopefully everyone can stay awake after lunch. I know it's getting into the afternoon here, but we got some exciting stuff to talk about today.
Yes, very excited about digital signage. Well, we get a lot of, we wanted to make sure that we had a session on some of the signage possibilities we had here at the law school, and I was just kind of going to do a whole presentation on that, and then I talked to Jamie about some of the really cool things he was doing at UC Davis, and figured that that was good to kill time, and so we both decided to do this. So we have a very wonderful agenda for you. I wanted to focus not just, I know a lot of schools are doing some form of digital signage in terms of throwing a monitor somewhere in a generally trafficked area with information, but we wanted to see how we could take that a step further and see what kinds of the touch interface design and applications we were using in our schools. We want to give you just kind of a brief overview of some of the hardware options and vendor options that were available. Obviously, we'll go through some stuff in each of our schools, and then just basic interface. So if you're going to be spending money either writing something for yourself, or purchasing a commercial program, what are the kinds of things you should look for when you're designing and implementing your interface?
We also kind of want to make this a little bit dynamic too, so if you guys have questions throughout, and then hopefully at the end we'll finish with enough time that we can have a good discussion and talk about what everyone else is doing, because that seems to be the best way. I mean, the best part about CALI conferences is that we can talk to each other and figure out what everyone else is doing, because let's face it, we're not the experts in the room. Everyone is doing something that's really wonderful, and we can share them with each other. So hopefully we'll have some time at the end to kind of facilitate that conversation.
So why touch? One of the things that we were thinking about just kind of an evolution of digital signage, making sure that now that we have all this content, and let me tell you, it's a real struggle to kind of get enough content and have it updated and everything on the displays, and we'll talk about that. Now, how do you use it? How do you engage your students and your the rest of the users on campus, giving them instant access to on-demand content, making sure that if they have a question that, not only do you have to have, especially here, you guys have been kind of shuffled around between the two buildings. During the year, we only have one guard at the front desk here on this side of the building. So if someone is on the other side of the building in the lobby and has a question about something, then a lot of things like, where is this person's office, or how do I get to this event, what room is it in, can be answered by going to the touchscreen rather than having to physically find someone that knows what they're talking about. Always updatable content, making sure that, especially for marketing purposes, for events on campus or in the building, being able to kind of market and display that information, again, without having to send 500,000 emails to the students saying, okay, well today we're going to have this in room 107, then the touchscreens can get that information. And then campus and building navigation, showing people through maps or diagrams or whatever how to get to the places if they're not specifically familiar with your building. Interactive content is always good. Jamie has a demo on that he'll go into. Reducing staffing needs, I'm only questioning that. I know that there are a lot of schools that hire student workers or work-study students to sit at a central location somewhere and give out information. Could that staffing be limited or reduced in some way because you increase your touch screens and your information display across your building? And course information, especially the first week of school when the 1Ls show up, what's the most, where's this room? Oh my God, how do I get to this room? Where's my class? All that information, they just go to the touch screen, pull up, what is happening that day, and they have easy access to that information.
So I wanted to give you kind of a, I know this is a busy slide, but I wanted to give a brief overview of some of the different types of options you have when looking at touchscreens. There are companies out there that have end-to-end solutions for touchscreens. So 4Winds Interactive will help you source the hardware and develop content. CyberTouch and 3M Touch, Elo Touch are all hardware manufacturers, so they develop the actual touch overlays and then integrate them into devices. Samsung has a series of touchscreen devices that include content distribution systems. Omni Display is another, and Horizon Display is actually the one we used, and they're a custom integrator, and so it made sense for us when we did our touchscreens, which I'll go into later, to kind of partner with somebody who really had a stellar knowledge of touch, but didn't work with any of the other pieces, and so we kind of filled in the gaps there. If you're not familiar with touch, there are really 4 big types of technology out there right now. Resistive touch is where there's 2 layers of a material on the screen, and when you touch the 2 layers together, it figures out the coordinates of the touch to give you an input. Capacitive actually is a solid surface, which overlays tiny little wires, and when you touch the screen, you actually disrupt electrical current across the surface. So resistive is nice if you just want to use a gloved hand or a pencil or a stylus. Capacitive, you have to use a finger because it uses electrical current from your body. It uses your body to disrupt electrical current on the screen. Infrared uses a matrix of infrared beams to do coordinates on the screen. And optical imaging, which has become kind of the best for large format displays, uses a series of cameras at the corners of the screen to detect infrared pulses on the surface. And your finger is what disrupts and creates the infrared pulse. So optical imaging is nice because you can use that for multi-touch. It can give you multiple points at one time. Resistive and capacitive typically give you 1, although the iPhone does use capacitive. We have an example just to kind of show you, if you're not familiar with multi-touch, what you can do with multi-touch screens. This is kind of cool to just kind of shoot. This was done a couple of years ago even. But it's a nice example of what multi-touch really can do, and the power of it and the benefits of it. Nice. So there's not a whole lot of content here, but you can kind of get the idea that there's hundreds of thousands of possibilities of what you can do with multi-touch on a screen to really engage a user. I have a 2-year-old son, and he intuitively understands multi-touch, motioning, gesturing. He grabs my iPhone and playing with it, watching pictures and stuff. People understand it's very intuitive for them. And so if you can leverage technology like this to really engage your clients, your customers, your visitors, your alumni, it has a huge impact. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So really, what's the goal of, and it's the World Cup, so I thought that was funny. What's the goal of digital signage in general and then touch? It's, in my opinion, is to engage your audience. It's to bring people in who may need to know some kind of information about your school, about your programs, about events that are happening, and deliver that content to them in a way that's meaningful to them. So putting screens in locations where users are going to happen across them, not have to go searching them out. Delivering content that's quick and easy and rich and relevant and up to date, and really kind of getting people to navigate your building the way they need to find events, or just kind of be excited about what's happening. Some of it's just to show off, hey, we're really cool and we did some great stuff with technology. Love us, give us money, donate to the school, help us do these kinds of things again and really help the students. So give us raises, right? So there's lots of stuff going on there. And I think digital signage can really help a lot of that. Yes?
Are there any of these companies you mentioned, are there any that are either Mac, more prone to design the infrastructure for the Mac or infrastructure for the PC? Are they soft hardware dependent or independent? Or?
So I gave a list of companies earlier, and some are kind of both. You know, one does. Some companies, I think Elo Touch is more of a PC kind of manufacturer. 41's Interactive is an integrator, so they'll give you whatever you really need. Horizon, for us, will do both. They just create the interface and give you a USB, essentially connection to your computer, and then they write drivers that will work on PC, Mac, or Linux. And so it just becomes an interface device, just like a mouse. So it really depends on your application what makes the most sense for your school. We have completely different signage, but the beauty of signage is that at the surface, from the user standpoint, it's completely ubiquitous. They have no idea what's happening in the background. But I think you use Windows or Linux and a lot of Java, PHP stuff. I use C# on the back end, so it just depends. But a lot of stuff is specific for what your application is. So just some real topic level overview of what digital signage, and we say digital signage, but this is touch as well. The content, I think, is the biggest piece of this, and without the rich content, without developing a really great user interface, no one's going to look at the content or read it or interact with it. So content design is always a big thing. We have a graphic design department at our school, and we use them for everything that we're doing with this. We usually involve them at the front of the project and get the marketing people involved so that we're designing it from the user's perspective and then doing all the really cool stuff in the background. But the user doesn't care about all the ones and zeros. They just want to know that when I'm trying to find the information, it's there and I can find it, and it's relevant and it's very easy to navigate. So we take everything from the user's perspective. Once you have the content management or the distribution of the content, there's plenty of different systems. Samsung has a system for distributing content. Polycom just came out with a whole new content distribution system where it integrates with the players. We use some kind of mix of both, and I'll go into that later. And then after the content distribution system, it's just the player itself. And typical players can be an external box, like a Mac Mini. You can call that a content player. Or it could be a special device that plugs into your monitor, or it can be built into the monitor itself. So some nice things about built-in players. The system's clean. You can actually get an LCD screen with a built-in player and has the touch enabled on top of it, and you just hang it on the wall, plug in an Ethernet cable and a power cable, and it's done. It's a really clean install. It's easy to put someplace. And wherever you have power and data, you can hang that on the wall and you're ready to go. You don't have to update it separately and figure out hardware. Everything works together. But when you want to upgrade it, you have to upgrade the whole device. You can't just upgrade the player itself. So you kind of have to figure out what's the best scenario for your school and determine whether or not you want to separate the two. It's sometimes cheaper to get it integrated. You can maybe buy a Samsung LCD screen with the built-in player for $2,400 versus a $2,000 screen without the player. Rough numbers, but so it makes sometimes you just kind of have to do the cost comparison and see what makes sense. External players can be a whole lot more powerful than you're going to get built into your screen. So you can put a Mac Mini behind it, which is more powerful than you're going to get on a little card stuck into the side of an LCD screen. Or you can put a regular full-size computer back there, a Mac Pro or a Dell, and stick that behind the machine and use that to drive the content. It really depends on how much interactivity you want, how much rich graphics you need, so what kind of power you need, what kind of power you need behind the system.
Do you have any high traffic areas versus low traffic areas so that one suffers an abuse more than a lower traffic area that would be touched occasionally? I mean, have you made a choice as to this area gets a specific kind of screen, whereas that area gets?
We try to standardize it. One for just simplicity, and two for support. When we're getting parts or we're getting things done, it's easier to have the same hardware in each location. And so we kind of developed it. We developed all of our digital signage for the most demanding applications. We have two specialized screens, which I can talk about towards the end if we have time, that are a little bit different than our normal standard.
But I was just thinking in terms of some people are very aggressive at touching the screen, and others are just flick it kind of thing. And the flickers would make the screen last longer. And if someone's walking immediately into the building and needs to find the dean's office right away, then
Well, in contrast to Jamie, I actually have 3 different kinds of screens. We have the big, large touchscreen that you'll see here at the end of the hall in the main lobby is an optical touch with it's just we bought a television and then we spec'd an overlay for that television that again has the 2 cameras on the side. So you can bang that thing, and as long as you don't, bang through the bulletproof glass that they put behind the cameras, you'll be good to go. We also have a 32-inch screen that is actually not touched yet because we're still running some things that has a computer remotely connected into our TC in the basement. That's on the other side of the building. It's a smaller screen because it's at the back entrance of the building. So we figured since that area gets less traffic, we put a smaller screen that has, that was a little less expensive that we would use there. And then I also have a very small 17-inch touch monitor on the second floor by our clinic area, so that when you come off the main bridge where everyone had picked up their lunch, if you need to get information there, there's just a smaller screen there, and that's just a cheap Elo $400 monitor. And again, we run the computer back to a central location in our tech closet.
So, I think you can do a variety of things in a variety of places that meet your needs based on what the requirements are for each space. Which is the nice thing about touchscreens is that they come in 1,000 different flavors and really are customizable. It's kind of nice.
So a couple of things. Again, this is the touchscreen that we have at the law school in each of the main lobbies. One of the negative things is that this screen, like Jamie was saying, there's a big kind of box, and then there's a camera here and a camera here, and then if you put your finger kind of there, then you have the cameras see where you are. It's actually really cool because there's little infrared LED lights all the way down here and here. So when the camera sees these lights, and if you put your finger in the middle of them, then it knows where you are. So you can actually have like 8 or 10 different individual touch locations that you can kind of move things. So it's extremely multi-touch, and I really like it. Problem is, and we didn't realize this, it doesn't work well in areas that are bright. So in the other lobby that has a big sun shining on it 3 hours a day before it kind of passes through the law school, it's shoddy. And so we're actually going to have to move that at some point when we figure out. We're waiting because and you'll see a lot of our area here doesn't have there's a lot of stuff up on the walls because we're waiting for some more donor plaques and everything to get put in place, and then some paintings, and then we'll be allowed to pick where we're allowed to have the touchscreen. So another thing to consider, if you have a lobby that's very bright, has a lot of sunlight, you may want to make sure that we're picking a technology that is touch sensitive and not optically driven. So again, annotation. So we bought LG 42-inch displays. They had a 3-year warranty. They were $1,100 for us. It was a $100 amount to put it on the wall. So it was a great buy. We purchased 2 smart technologies, the people that make the smart boards that you don't see here, but we don't buy them. But a lot of law schools have the smart boards. Make overlays as well. In the touchscreen here on this side of the building, we actually just kind of drilled through the wall because that just happened to be where our first floor tech closet was with all the routers and switches. So we were easily able to just stick a computer behind it through the wall. We have VGA and USB senders that are, or RS-232, depending on which model, coming from the other touch screens to a central location. We also decided, especially as we started to add flash and rotating images and things, that putting a small computer, like we have these little EPC $700 little jobs that we could physically stick behind the LCD monitors. They weren't running as well as we wanted them to, so we just put normal desktops in front of it. And another interesting thing, if you're using USB remotely, putting a hub at one side will sometimes, depending on how long it is on both locations, helps with running the power connections through.
So this is good.
When you say touch overlay, like will it go into any standard 42-inch monitor?
The Activists have specific monitors that they're built for. So basically there's an LG Activist overlay that covers the 10 42-inch monitors that LG has made in the last 10 years. There's one for the Panasonic models.
So you have to buy it as a...
Well, we didn't buy them together, but we knew that we had to spec out both before we could pick out which one.
Okay.
So we could use another LG 42-inch television. And that's simply because in addition to the size of the cameras and the glass, there's a bevel so that because you can't necessarily put your finger right up next to the camera, it doesn't sense it well. So there's a 2-inch black bevel around it so you don't touch there. So the size of that bevel is simply different with other monitors.
And what is the additional cost for the touch overlay?
It was like $1,100 for the television. The Activist was about $1,500. So $2,600 plus the extender. So it was about $3,000 for everything at that location, and then the computer wherever that is. The software running on the touches that we have, Windows XP, Opera web browser in kiosk mode. That's the same technology. That's the same browser that we use on all of the digital signage for all of the classrooms, other than the Opera's run on a Linux box. It's actually a very, very old Dell GX150 with 256 megabytes. Yes, megabytes of RAM. We go through video cards like crazy because they're really hot. But we have these cheap little $20 PCI network cards. We've got a big fan that we just kind of throw in there and hope that stuff doesn't die. But no, it's actually very reliable. Once we figured out that the case was overheating and that's why things were dying, now that we get some good airflow, it's pretty good. The Opera running itself is simply a web page that I have with a background that's a specific length and width, and so that you don't get the scroll bars and everything. I program in PHP MySQL, so that's what we have. We also have a PHP MySQL calendaring system that we purchased. I forget the name of the company. That was like $1,000 that we just purchased, and that's what we use for our room reservation system. Prototype and Signage are just applications that I've been using. Scriptalicious, I love Scriptalicious. That's giving me the touch feedback. So when and we'll talk about feedback in a second, but when you touch one of the buttons we have, it actually blinks or dims or something to know that that's there. We also have RSS feeds for our news and information that we pull from the students. Any time a student makes a reservation for a room or an event that they have, they submit an announcement form to us, and then that rotates through on the touchscreens. We also have, and you'll see there's a welcome CALI image on some of the larger screens we have around, including the touchscreens. So we also take PowerPoint images or PowerPoint slides from students for large events that they want to post, and we'll print it to like an image file and then rotate a few of them on the screen as well. I also, if anyone, and I saw this, somebody asked about this on TechNotes, the National Weather Service gives a whole bunch of weather data to weather.com and all sorts of other places, and the requirement is that they then give that data out and disseminate it. So weather.com will give you a free RSS feed if you sign up for it correctly. Depending on your zip, you just pop in your zip code and it'll give you the XML for the information. They also give you little icons you can display, which is wonderful. So that was easy. I'm also working on a traffic page that will come up because I'm sure we all have to deal with traffic in our areas. So if there's a problem on the bridge that you guys went over in Philly or in some of the other places going to South Jersey, a little alert would come up that says, blah, blah, blah. Same kind of thing that National Transportation Bureau has the same kind of a deal for RSS feeds and things. I just haven't gotten to it.
Sam, a question. Have you thought about doing a mobile app platform with this?
Yes. One thing you need to understand, at least with Rutgers, there's 4 of us for everything that we do that plugs in. So that is something I would really love to do that would require an iPhone that I don't have. I would love them to buy me one, but that's not going to happen. So my hope is that I can get some grant funding for an iPad and kind of do something like that. But we'll see how that goes. But yes, I would love to, and especially, we'd like to extend that into other areas of our course management systems, disseminating information to students, all sorts of stuff. So I really hope I get some money soon for that, yes.
We're talking internally about, and by we, me, I started doing Objective-C training, and if you don't do a whole lot of Objective-C programming, it's like falling down a rabbit hole. It takes you back to C programming and then overlays a bunch of things on top of it, which are very complicated and make the programming language powerful but complex. So I just started doing training on that so that I can begin writing iPad apps for the iPhone, or for the systems. I think the cool thing would be to take an iPad and put what's happening in a conference room or a classroom for the day, and for $500 and some power, you can hang that at every single door to every single classroom or conference room. And they update, and then if you give away the bag here, if you tie an RFID reader to it, then students that have a student ID card can authenticate to the thing and reserve the room right now, and then walk in. So it's a pipe dream. Yeah, so I'm hoping that within the next year we can get close to something like that. If I can get enough programming experience under my belt to just get it to display what's happening in a conference room, I would be pretty happy. But it's something to work towards. I think there's a lot of potential for that in digital signage applications. Because it's a really inexpensive screen with the computer behind it and the interactivity. So this is what our information kiosk looks like. I didn't want to do a live demo because they always fail. So this is what our system looks like. Our goal was to design it to be super, super simple. So there's 4 big buttons when you walk up to it. And the underlying system is basically just navigation to the building. So we put these at all the entrances to the school. And when you walk in, you want to see a building directory, you can click on people. It gives you a list of all the faculty, staff that are in the building. You can get profiles on the individual person and then navigate to their office. Same thing with locations. Get a list of locations, classrooms, office suites, dean's office, registrar's office, admissions. Find out about each of the departments and then navigate the space. Events, show you a list of the events that are happening in the building today and then how to get there. And then about the school is just kind of some marketing, PR stuff. We'll know that we're the best law school ever, and we're glad that you happen to come here, and this is why we're great. So it's very simple, but it provides a lot of functionality. So our system, and we've got a number of these throughout the building. We use 46-inch Samsung displays. They're the DXN series Samsung, so they have a built-in embedded Windows XP player in the screen. And they also have this really, really cool thing called Magic Info, which allows us to schedule the screens to play certain types of content. It allows us to ship PowerPoint presentations, video files, or web pages to the screens. And it also allows us to turn them on and off, mute them, switch inputs. So if we want to switch it over to a television feed or CNN for the day, we can do all that from a centralized location. We contracted with a company called Horizon Displays, and they're a custom integrator. So what they've done is they've taken the Samsung screens that we like so much, and they ripped the bezel out. They put their own bezel on top of it using an 8mm safety glass, which I'm not going to test, but they say withstands 22 bullet, so it's relatively bulletproof. So the idea is that students can pound on it and it won't break, especially in high traffic areas. And then they do the optical cameras on either side of the top corners, and it gets moved. We can do gesturing, multi-touch, everything from that screen. The browser on the screen is Opera in kiosk mode. Opera lets us do really cool things that IE can't do, like actually display web pages correctly. Yes, but Opera, the one thing that Opera does have really good support for SVG. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit, but scalable vector graphics allow us to do point-to-point navigation over maps. So we can draw lines across the map, and it's really powerful. And then the web page is written in C#, MySQL, using jQuery. And programming language is relatively independent here. You use PHP, I use C#. Some people really like Java. It all displays HTML at the end of the day. And then just two little things. We wrote our own internal scheduling system that handles the distribution of events and other content like that. And so I think that's, from a user standpoint, or from a design standpoint, I think that's the biggest problem that we had to tackle up front was, touchscreens are relatively easy to take a touchscreen from the market, put it on your wall, but getting the content to it, figuring out what content you want to put there, getting the design to actually be attractive, and then actually getting the content to be updated frequently is the big challenge. And so we wrote a scheduling system that, just like he had said, figures out what's happening in the building, the events and things, and then that system drives the content to the screens. So it's a completely separate system that we're just pulling the information out of. So we don't have to update the content on the screens every day. It just happens automatically.
Excuse me. So each and every unit has its own XP player?
Mm-hmm.
But is there any content you synchronize?
It's just playing a website. So basically the player, its job is to load up a web page that we run internally.
Oh, okay. So all will be off the same page, the main page will be loading to all of the units.
And we have two screens that are kind of like this. One screen is passive, so it's non-interactive, but displays dynamic content. And then the other one is interactive for actually navigating through the building. And the two kind of play off each other. We'll be showing the events that are happening, and now you can figure out how to get there.
Okay, we are thinking of doing something for our law school, and one of the options suggested was to run, like a transmitter and receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I don't know, you might have used it too, from VGA to RJ45.
Yes. Right, which is what we use to get to the other sides of the building. Not this display, but all the other ones on the building.
Yes, so if you can do that, you can house the computer someplace else in the building in the server room and then run Cat5 to each of the screens. What we decided to do instead was build the actual computer into the monitor, and then we just have a network drop there. And so we put power and a network drop at every location. The screen, the computer in the screen plugs into the Ethernet connection, and then your content your building network.
But if you go that route, then if you split the same signal, then the same page will be showing up in all the different screens, isn't it?
You would, right, which is why if you had a touchscreen, you wouldn't split the signal. So we have
if it is just
the individual send and receive for each unit.
So this is just a really topical overview of how our scheduling system works. We've got web services that take in, there's user interaction on the page, obviously for requesting and all that stuff. But we have web services that get information from Banner to actually collect the data. So our student information system that actually keeps track of all of our courses can feed directly into our scheduling system to reduce manual entry of things. The scheduling system does rooms, events, and announcements for students, and then it sends all that information back out to various systems like our digital signage. So our interactive map, so the interactive maps, I'll give you a demo of it, and then I'll go through exactly how we create them, because it's pretty neat. It's super simple. We designed it so that it can be scalable to one floor, an entire building, or an entire campus. And it's about 1,000 lines of JavaScript that handle this, and I'm happy to give it out. So if you want a copy of the application at the end, just send me an email and I'll give it to you. Basically what it does is it takes an SVG file, which you can export from Adobe Illustrator, and then the program reads in the SVG file and then does the overlay and draws paths from point to point. I have a very simple canned version of this just to show you because it's built into the system. But so we're technically right now, the system thinks we're right here in this corner, in this room. And then it's going to route me to wherever else I click. So you would have an event that you want to go to the dean's office, and you click that on the screen, and it would then trigger the animation on the screen. Or you can just say, route me to this room, and we'll draw the route. So if I want to go to this room, which is actually my office, the system will draw you a line, navigating the hallway, hopefully not running over any other students, and take you to your office. This is our courtyard, and so this will actually take us through the courtyard along a defined path to get us into this room. If it wants to. Come on, there. So like I said, live demos, awesome. Never works. There we go. Yeah. So the cool thing is you can just export these files, and we've, like everything else, we like to offload the work from IT onto the people that are supposed to be doing that stuff instead of doing the work for everybody. So we've, our marketing department and the graphic designers that work in the marketing department handle all of the renderings for what our floor plans look like. They take CAD files from the architects and then make them pretty so that people can look at them and they put them on the website or whatever. So what we've done is given them the tools that they can take this drawing in Adobe Illustrator and then generate the SVG and then just hand it back to us. So as the floor plan changes, when there's renovations happening in the building, they can just quickly update the file, re-export the SVG, and the system automatically recalculates routes.
So are they drawing the routes as different SVG things,
so
lots and lots of different layers, and then giving it to you?
Yes, I'm going to show you that. I don't know how to work.
Okay. I'm going back.
All right. So as you have, there's multiple layers of the SVG in Illustrator, and so they get the base drawing from the architects, which includes everything from where the fire extinguishers are to where power stubs up, and they turn it into something pretty that actually looks like a building. And then they overlay on top of that different layers for doors, rooms themselves, so we can trigger events to actually navigate to the room. And then every room has a door, so we know how to get you into it. And they have paths and portals. And portals are ways to navigate through floors. So they draw and start adding layers for rooms, and then they add the doors and the paths, and they export this with all the different paths and layers on it. So updates are relatively simple. And then from here, the system generates all of the actual navigation on the screen. So it's one file. It's it's a bit tedious to do all the layers, but once you do it one time, it's relatively done. And the cool thing is that you can add on to it then. So you can build the next building and say, okay, now this building has a path to the next building on campus, and it automatically routes and figures out.
Excuse me, like if you have multiple floors in that building, like you are on the ground floor and an office is on the 4th floor, will it draw the line from one floor all the way to the 4th floor?
Yes.
The color-coded.
So again, I did kind of a canned example to show you. But if I go to my first floor here, and maybe I should restart this because it's being funky.
Because I didn't see you picking a different floor to go.
Okay, so this is the first floor, and I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm going to go to the second
Pick-
floor of the
pick it
building,
there, okay.
and now I'm going to go to this classroom.
Okay.
It should go back to the first floor, take you to the stairwell, and then route you through to this room. So it uses when you define the stairs as a portal, it knows that it can use that to go through floors. And then you can there's an attribute for defining an ADA accessible route, so that it takes you to an elevator as opposed to stairs.
But it only shows one route at a time,
Right.
unless you select that you want elevator.
Yeah, it'll show one route at a time, so if you can say I want elevators. Alright, cool. So it's seemingly simple, but it's doing some pretty cool stuff in the back end, and it's just about 1,000 lines of JavaScript. And we're continuing to tweak it to make it a little more powerful so that right now it's actually calculating the route every single time. We're going to tweak the algorithm a little bit so that it's super fast. If you wanted to scale it out to an entire campus, calculating that route where there's 50 different ways to get there might be pretty tedious. But it always chooses the shortest path from point A to point B.
So a couple things to think about, whether you're building it yourself, coding it yourself, or going with a commercial solution that does all this stuff kind of out of the box. What are the kinds of things you want to look for in either the design you're creating or the design that they're handing to you or you're paying for. Again, like Jamie was talking about, where are you going to get the data? We were fortunate enough that about 2 years before we got this building, we were able to move away from the very large binder of room reservations that were in paper up in the dean's office and move to an online reservation system. When we did that, we spec'd making sure that we could pull data out of that and RSS feeds, and actually right now we just pull it right from the MySQL because it's faster to get the information. But don't underestimate how hard that is if you haven't done that already, because there's no sense in spending $20,000, $30,000 to put displays all over the place if you can't put something meaningful on them. It's very time-consuming to do it in the first place and to retrain everyone on using the new reservation system. And more importantly, it's extremely time-consuming in keeping it current. Somebody has to be, that person, and God, it's not IT, who is approving rooms, who is denying rooms, who is saying, yes, you can have a room for that day, but you can't call it that. You have to call it something more generic because it's going to be posted all over the touchscreen. For example, having a room that has a typo or something, someone's going to have to read all this stuff because it looks really bad if you have a room reservation that says CALI conference instead of CALI conference. It would look really bad. So someone is actually actively monitoring all of this content all the time, and it gets tedious, so that has to be part of the planning process. Again, is anyone reviewing the content before it's sent out? Is there someone just checking for grammar and spelling? Is someone making sure, yes, the Constitutional Law Society is in room 103, they're not in room 207, so you need to change your reservation because you're in the wrong room. If you have content that can't be shown, we, public university, our building is open, our library is open to the public, so we have people that work in different parts of the law school that may not necessarily want to be displayed on the touchscreen, so that any random Joe Schmo that wants legal advice would come running and to that person and ask for help. So we have you have to have content permissions. Thinking about your content and just say, well, we're going to take the online directory that's right now behind this big firewall. You have to log in first to be a Rutgers student or whatever, and make sure that that translates into having anyone that walks off the street be able to access that content.
Especially if you turn it into a mobile device.
Especially if there's an iPad, which I really hope I get one. Have I said that out? We are being recorded, so I'm assuming someone's going to watch.
In doing research for this, we've both kind of done similar projects, and there was a lot of methodology going into this, and I actually found a really great article from the University of Maryland called Immediate Usability Kiosk Design Principles from the CHI 2001 Photo Library. And so there was a people that published an article about user design principles, like actually creating a user interface that is really rich and attractive and key concepts that you should think about when designing a user interface for touch. And we can give you a link to the actual article. But it was done from the Department of Computer Science, the Human-Computer Interaction Lab. And they had 4 big principles. One was immediate attraction. So to steal exactly from them, use the most attractive content to demonstrate the system and invite use. So they want you to organize content, to highlight the treasures, and implement an attract sequence the track sequence and begin using the systems before actually enticed to use the system. They immediately know from walking up to it that it's a touch-enabled system and that they should be interacting with it. So immediate learning. Support zero trial learning. Users should be able to use the interface after observing others or using it themselves for a brief period of time, 15 seconds. It should be very intuitive. It should require no training to use. Anybody should be able to walk up, whether it's a 75-year-old professor or a 2-year-old kid. Simplest practical interface possible. And then they say immediate engagement. So Encourage users to immediately interact with the content, provide an immediate reward, and avoid interrupting them. So don't log in, don't have login sequences or identification in order to use the system. Don't give them any dial-up boxes or anything annoying. Just give them the content they want immediately. And the last thing was immediate disengagement. When a user departs, immediately reset the system and prepare for the next visitor. So using proximity sensors, infrared, or just timing from user input to reset the system back to the attraction mode. So I thought those were kind of important design principles to discuss.
A couple other specifics, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you guys went through trial by fire and water, so is there any chance that you might have figured out what department would do the programming, or did you just arbitrarily, that department seems to make the most sense? I mean, because we set up 3 screens and it arbitrarily just went to public affairs and they just handled everything. I mean, is that, you maybe, I mean, how did you decide on the programming?
We may be smaller. We are the programming. So if there's any programming done in the building, I think he's the programmer. I have programmers on staff, but we do all the programming for our school. And
I mean, programming as far as what the event is, what gets composed, what gets placed, whether it merits going up there.
That's more of an administrative kind of question. And we, in consultation with our dean's office, decided that there is a member of our dean's office, not a dean, but one of their assistants, that is the gatekeeper for all events. And she's an administrative assistant, and she literally, whenever an event gets requested, she approves and says that's worthy of being displayed on the screen or that is not. And so there is some human interaction there, that she's the gatekeeper.
We have 3 people actually that do ours. We have one that works for one of the faculty deans, we have one that works for our dean of students, and then we have just kind of a third floater in case either of those 2 are away. So if it's an event that a faculty member asks for a room reservation, then that person would be in charge of doing that. Also, in our announcement system, part of the approval process when reviewing the code, the assistant to the dean of students, when they're reviewing the student things, will also give that a priority. So our display systems will display the first 5 most important, highest priority items on all of our display systems. And then the touchscreens, you have access to all of the display system, all of the events in order of that priority. And that we made that very clear that, of course, the priority is the priority of the law school and the university, and not of the faculty member or the person that is asking for the reservation, because that information for us actually gets thrown on our homepage of our website and all sorts of other places with an interactive setting. So it's important. Is there another question? Okay. So as I mentioned, areas of bright sunlight, not so good with the touch, with the optical. In addition to that, you want to have a color scheme that is at all possible very contrasting. So, especially Rutgers, we're black, red, and white. So we have black text on the displays, white, well, it's like a light grayish background, and then our bright Rutgers red, which is kind of like your bags actually. I really like the red for the outside highlights and things. Size matters with font. Obviously, you need to be able to read it. Not necessarily, yes, with your touchscreens, you're going to be sitting there, looking at the screen, so you're, in theory, within arm's length. But the idea is, as you're walking in the door, as you're walking past the lobby, you want to see those rotating images and those announcements that we're posting. Again, to attract the people, especially people, newer students or people that haven't, necessarily walked through that lobby a billion times. Get them into that screen and get them into that content. Use that as a source of advertising. Just as a technical thing, using buttons instead of text that you highlight, especially when you're doing, for us we're using web pages, so it's really easy to just make a link that does something. But it's much, much, much better to make a button that does something, because if you're, depending on your kind of touchscreen, if you're trying to touch a U and you touch in the middle of the U, you're not going to get it to touch, and so somebody's hitting the big U and it's not doing anything because they have to hit the little line for the U. So having one button that is a big kind of target to press is a good idea. Again, for engaging people, moving, blinking, flashing colors, whatever you got to do to get that person to tastefully, notice the touchscreen is a good idea. When we don't have news items rotating through the images on the screens, we simply have, nice, pretty Rutgers pictures that kind of, rotate through and show you some of the nice, picturesque areas on campus.
Do you actually have anything on there that says, yes, you can touch me, or something like that? I mean, obviously your students are going to get used to it, but if there's something like this, how many people actually know that it's not something you have to stand there and wait for it to cycle?
So we kind of tackled that problem. Our screensaver is actually a video of somebody interacting with the screen. We didn't want to have the big touch me because I thought it was kind of just a little bit
Corny? Yeah.
And so
You can say.
But so to actually give them that experience to say, and these are all the things you can do with this screen, and to walk them through it step by step. And so it looks like there's the thing, like the big pointer finger that clicks the button and something happens, and then navigates them through different sections. And it also accomplishes the task of keeping the screens from having burn in and keeping them active and exciting.
Obviously, user feedback is important in all sorts of ways, but physical touch feedback is god-awfully important, especially when they're placing a button, if there's a problem, and they, one of the issues that we have when we were designing the screens is that we, most people need well, everybody I'm sure needs to deal with this. The screens need to be ADA compliant. So they can't be at 70 inches high in the air, where as long as you're over 5 feet and not sitting down in a wheelchair, you can touch it. So some of the problems are if you're like me, if I'm 6 feet tall and I try to touch a button, I'm not touching literally on the screen the same place that someone that's 4.5 feet tall is touching, even though we both, from our angle, are actually trying to hit the same thing. So making sure that you're kind of misproof by doing something when they get it right, so that they can get used to kind of their angle is important. Now, either visually with what we do is when you touch it, it kind of dims out and shows you that you've done something, or even if you have an audio kind of like ding or something when you do something, that would be good. Again, just large buttons, something that wouldn't matter if you're half an inch off because the button's 3 inches wide. You can just touch it, not a big deal. And just as a side note, we want to try to disable selecting text so people don't walk up to it and go beep all the way down the screen and have everything highlighted. Looks really good. Disabling outside contact, especially with touchscreens that are run like mice on USB, and especially because, again, like I told you, we had to put USB hubs at every display. Our students had the very interesting idea of bringing a USB keyboard and seeing what he could do on the touchscreen, and until we figured this out, all F4 got out of Opera, and so just trust me. Don't let that touchscreen get anywhere outside of your network. It's just better that way. And reset the display, not just when someone leaves, either by timeout or whatever, but every 20 minutes, every half an hour, we just kill Opera and throw it back on there, just so that if there's any problems, if anything's quirky, if there's something wrong, whatever, it's not there forever. At most, something's quirky for 20 minutes and then it'll reset. I've noticed that no matter what you do, there's going to be a point in time where something just freezes or it dies or whatever. One of the things that happened to us once was that we were using doing something. We rebooted the server one time because there was something wrong, and we didn't realize for like 3 hours that all the touchscreens were going to the website to try to get information, and the website was the thing that was resetting every 5 minutes, but it couldn't get to the HTML that says reset after 5 minutes, and we just had a page not found error on the displays for like 3 hours. We didn't realize that it didn't have that access and it didn't reset. So just something on the screen that will reset it. Opera has a wonderful reset due to no activity, just built into the kiosk mode. You just set that and it resets every so many seconds. There you go. Power is a huge factor. You wouldn't necessarily think that putting one display on the wall is a big deal, but we have like 40 plus. Some of them have computers associated with them that are are taking power. So obviously you want to do your best to, when the building is closed, sleep the displays, sleep the computers, turn them back on again. If you can't sleep them for whatever reason, because you're worried about someone coming in and needing to get information, one of the things we use our displays for is emergency notifications. So if there's some horrible thing on campus that information needs to be disseminated, stay in your classrooms or whatever, all the screens can be accessed by the dean and our director of communications, and they can put some kind of a message on there that blinks red and says, listen to me, do that. So if you don't want to turn everything off in the middle of the night, you can simply white out or black out the displays on your web page. Just don't display any content; it'll just be white, so you can do burn and get rid of burn and things. And again, having things moving as the display is being used is a good idea.
So I know we're kind of running out of time here, and I wanted to give everyone time to talk, but just some other additional things to talk about. ADA accessibility, he touched on it briefly, that to make sure the screen's positioned at the right height on the wall so that everybody can use the screen, or that you'll find yourself on the wrong side of a lawsuit, which is happening for admissions people all over the country right now. Not me either. Security, we'll make sure that people can't just walk off with those things. They're expensive.
Big locks.
And they walk off. They really do. People will unbolt them from the wall if they can. And it's a really nice, super cool thing to have in your mantle if you're a 20-year-old college student.
What do you use to secure it?
We use padlocks that go behind and actually lock the mount to the, or lock the screen to the mount, and they're almost inaccessible except by about that much room for a key. So you can't cut the lock off, you can't access the bolts without unlocking it. They do make screamers for them too, so that if you disconnect the thing, it just starts beeping and screaming, and hopefully the cops can get it back.
Who makes those?
Not offhand. I can find out for you. You send me an email. Aesthetics. You can actually have custom bezels made. They can look like anything you want. You can do them vertical or in portrait or landscape mode. And so they can really integrate it into your space. The more integrated into the space, the cleaner it looks, and it's just visually attractive. In the design for the audience, keep the content fresh. And then we put we can give out PowerPoint slides too. There's a couple of just planning guides that we found that are kind of helpful.
Tim, did you say that the one out here had the Catalyst overlay?
Actalist, yes.
It does.
You'll see, it actually says Actalist on the top, but it's interesting the kinds of different choices you can get. You can get an overlay that's basically like 1/10 of an inch bigger than the television, or you can get one like we have that's like 8 inches bigger on each side, so that again, those cameras can be able to work. It just depends on what you're looking for. We had a huge wall, so we figured, it wasn't a big deal to take up a little more extra space. And this is definitely the best one to touch because, again, the sunlight in the other one is not so good. So it's moving at some point. Just have to wait.
The price you paid, was there an academic discount?
For my screens themselves?
Yeah.
Our screens are about $5,000, so they're a little more expensive than his. But we had a custom bezel made, and they're
Including the touch?
Yeah, the screen, the integrated player, and the custom bezel with it's a stainless steel bezel, so it matches the actual aesthetics of the building. Yeah.
Is the documentation that's running with your programs, either one of you, lists frequency, like do people go in and ask for directions more, or do they go to this meeting and want to select that meeting more, or, are you able to run, this?
I guess we could put Google. I should probably put Google Analytics on there to find out because we don't track any of that stuff. But the web page is good.
Yeah, my each button is its own web page, so we can run Webalizer or whatever to find out. And on our touchscreens, they're usually about the same, but we disable outside content. Analytics would not go over that. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for coming. As a side note, for the dinner this evening, I highly recommend the apple pie. Very good.
I have one other thing that I'm interested in seeing. This is our visual track of we developed a museum exhibit for Martin Luther King, which is the namesake of our building. We're in King Hall. And so this is an interactive exhibit that highlights the timeline of Martin Luther King, has multimedia graphics and images and videos and audio files. And so you can see like the spinning wheel, that's enough to get people to interact with it. There's something moving on the screen, you should touch that. And so the images switch in and out and that spins.
So the email address.
Oh, I'm sorry, here.
There you go.
You should be on the podcast.
Okay.
You should be on the podcast.
Yes.
I am so happy I already have this. Did you file?
It's all in the.
But I mean,
You have new visual signage.
this specific section.
You only have the hardware.
Yeah, I think Debbie was going to. But they
Yeah, right, like the lyrics box, customs,
oh, yeah, Debbie's going to that.
something that we create some project, get into this process.
Well, I mean, in Cat 5 transmitters, I mean, we use DJI transmitters because they're $600 per pop. The problem is they only run 150. So, for example, we have a computer over here for the first three screens, and a computer over there for the other three screens.
Then how do you do that?
There's one computer there with three
Oh, that's why you had
VGAs, right? Well, or we could have purchased the $400 or $500 system.
Oh, yeah.
We figured that, you know, it'd be better to have the distance so that next time we wanted to do HDMI's and then, you know, split cords, and we could, you know, use the switch over.
Right, it sounds good to me.
We actually had and this is interesting, Cat 5 and Cat 6 cable transmitters are totally different. So we have a Cat 6 transmitter
6
here
months, it should be pretty solid.
that runs from the bottom floor here all the way up to the fourth floor display in there. Because the new building is Cat 6 and the old building is Cat
Yeah,
5.
but what you're saying is, you cannot transfer directly.
Yeah,
Because
so
you
5, 6 months from now, we should have it ironed out.
Then you can have my Cat 6 and then again back to YouTube.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. But if we were using the existing infrastructure here in the building,
Oh, yeah.
and we tried a Cat 5 video sender, it didn't work because it was Cat 6 over here. I don't know why I realized that.
That's literally, you are not the brand is doing it.
Yeah.
So you have rights to do that.
That's the only reason why we could, because it was in everything else. So, you know, now we're scrambling to.
And you have to get to iPads.
I hope somebody's listening.
Is that?
This is a year and a half old.
So,
Web event is the company. People think Reboot is the company. Web event is the software, so it's like $1,000, and then you know, $200 a year.
because
It's
buy
wonderful.
a 42-inch.
It doesn't easily do things. It doesn't. But everything is in the database in this very generic standard format. So I run queries from the site directly from my perspective. It's a lot easier to just run the queries to each display rather than generating a feed and going through and pulling the feed and putting it somewhere. It's a lot
Make
easier.
sure
Yeah.
that if you want to use the same kind of touch overlay he was using, then make sure you get a screen that you can get the overlay for.
And the manufacturer or whoever's producing the solution will know.
So smart put a list of manufacturers they partner with.
A list of actual TVs, like
Yeah.
buy this model of television.
That's exactly.
I would make sure you got that particular model so that it was
It's model specific.
Yes. And only because of, again, that size of the bevel. So depending on the year and make of the television, that width will change, and so they paint a different box around.
And how much does the player have to cost, the built-in player?
So I bought Samsung DXN screens, it's the digital signage line, and so it has the built-in player. And the screen itself, I think, lists for about, I don't know what it lists for, but it's straight about 16 or 1800.